Hello React Native developers, what is going on? Welcome to Can It Be Done in React Native? In this episode, we build a flexible drag-to-sort user interaction. Guys, I hope you are well. William here, recording from beautiful Zurich, Switzerland. In this episode, we are looking at the Duolingo drag-to-sort user interaction. So we have a word bank here at the bottom, and we can drag words onto the lines. And we can change the order of the words and put a word back into the word bank. Let me see if I can do this one. She's eating an apple and they are eating bread. So sie isst einen Apfel und sie essen Brot. So overall, the user experience feels very intuitive, very smooth. The visual design is beautiful. And that begs the question, how would we do this in React Native? Well, we're going to do this in 3 steps. Step 1, we render the words and calculate their dimensions. Each word has a different dimension, and we need this information to calculate the layout. Step 2, we need 2 functions, one to reorder the words and another to calculate the layout depending on the order of each word. And finally, step 3, we're going to wire these functions to a pan gesture handler so that we can build the final drag and drop user interactions. For step 1, we're simply going to render the words, attach the dimensions to some data. This is how the data model looks like. We need the position, which we're going to calculate dynamically depending on the order. We need the order of the word within the sentence and the position of the word when in the word bank. So if we drag the word outside the sentence. For step 2, we need 2 functions. One to move an item from one place of the array to the other, and that will enable us to recalculate the order of each word. And the second function we use to calculate the layout of the words given their order. Step 3, we connect the functions from step 2 to a gesture. Each tile has a pan gesture handler. If the gesture is not active, we transition to the offset X and Y value. If the gesture is active, we drag the tile around instead. If the tile position is over another tile, we move its position in the array and recalculate the layout, which will force the other tile to transition from one position to the other. When we release the gesture, we transition nicely to their offset position. But what do you guys think? Can it be done in React Native? Let's have a look. Before we get started, one thing, if you're interested to learn the fundamentals of gestures and animations in React Native, I hope that you will check out my online course at startreactnative.dev. My goal with this course is to provide you with all the tools and knowledge necessary in order to build incredible user experiences in React Native that will run at 60 FPS, even on low-end devices. And we are covering both reanimated version 1 and version 2 in the course. So if you're interested to learn the fundamentals, I hope that you will check it out at startreactnative.dev. Here is the boilerplate project, which is also available with the source code on GitHub in case you want to code along with me in the video. So we have the list of words, and we have the word list component, which takes as children the word component in simply a static layout for each word. And as you can see, each word has a different size. And if we go into the word list, we have a couple of things already. We have a state ready. So if we don't know the measurements of each word, we don't display the final rendering yet. We first need to calculate the dimensions of each word. And once we have the dimensions, we show the final layout. And we have the offset variable. So we know that to each word, we need to attach some animation values, the order of the word within the sentence, and if the word is in the word bank, so it has no order because we didn't drag it yet onto the sentence, its order will be -1. the dimensions, which we're going to measure using onLayout, the position, which we're going to calculate dynamically depending on the order, and original X, original Y, which is the position of the word when it's in the word bank. If the measurements hasn't been made yet, we display this layout that you see here. If not, we display the final layout. So if ready is true, where the words will be laid out into the word bank, and then we can drag and drop them onto the sentences. Here you see, since we don't even know the dimensions of the word, there's like an absolute position field. They are all overlaid on top of each other. And so we're going to do step 1, measure these words, also get the original X, original Y position. And once these measurements have been done, we will set ready to true. And by the way, just a small note here, you'll notice that I use animation values for all of this data. I don't need to, right? Because original X, original Y with height are not things which are going to change dynamically. It's something we calculate upfront. What will change dynamically and what need to be an animation value is order X and Y. But here I use animation values for everything just to be consistent, because I would just need to have like I would need to use, for instance, for original X, original Y, use ref. So instead of dot value, we would have dot current. I just thought it would be easier to use animation values for all of these properties. But obviously we only react, so we only need animation values for X, Y, and order. So for each child here, we're going to add the onLayout handler. So we will have actually onLayout. So it's a native event, and I think it's the layout property, and we have X, Y, width, and height. Now the offset is offsets at index, and we can set offset width.value to be width, offset.height.value to be height. This is a really cool auto-completion done by tab 9. Original x.value equals x, and offset original y value equals y. This plugin is getting very, very good. Once this assignment is done, we need to check if all the assignments have been done, and if yes, we need to do so we need to check if this was the last measurement, and if it is, we set ready to true. And for that, so I'm going to show you how we do it. So we are going to loop on the offsets, filter if the offset, and by the way, sorry, we need also to set the order to be -1. There is no order yet. It's in the word bank, order.value. So here we have offset, let's say, so here default value is 0. So if I do offset order.value is different from -1, if the length equals at 0, it means that all the measurements have been done. Is that correct? Yeah, I think so. All the measurements have been done, and we can set ready to true. Set ready true. And as you can see, this is not working because we need to run this check on the UI thread. So we're going to use run on UI. And so we're going to invoke a function. So here we add the worklet annotation. so that the function gets compiled and run onto the UI thread, and we execute it. So now it should work nicely. Yes, perfect. So we have the measurements for each tile. So step 2, we're going to calculate. So here, actually, if I go, sorry, before we get to step 2, if I go to the word here, and so we have the offset. So we can, I'm going to remove this here, and we can do width equals offset dot width dot value. Same for height. Oops. And you see here, so the size is taken into consideration. They are all overlaid on top of each other, and this is where we're going to use a function to calculate the layout depending on the size and the position. But also here, since order is -1, they should be in the word bank. And so actually we could build this function already. So we can create a variable called is in bank. And so it's going to be a derived value. So we're going to look at offset.order.value equals -1. And we're going to, we're going to create translate X and translate Y to move these into the word bank. So translate X. So use derived value is a hook where we can execute JavaScript code onto the UI thread to calculate, to derive an animation value based on other animation values. So here also we're going to use derived value. And if it's in the bank, is in bank, we return, we're going to return offset.originalX.value. Same for Y. Offset.originalY.value. And if not, we're going to return offset.x.value, .y.value. And here .x.value. So we can apply the transform here. So it's translate x.value, translate y.value. So here I need to create 2 objects. And also here I'm sure there is a way in TypeScript to configure this. So here it should complain because I'm trying to check if something is truthy, should be .value. I'm sure there is probably a way to statically complain about this, so we don't have to do such mistake. So let's have a look. Okay, so almost. So here we have margin top and margin left. So we need to add margin top. So margin top is and margin left are the offset of the word bank from the lines from the top and the left side. So here I'm going to do plus margin top, and here, because these positions original X, original Y were calculated already with the margin, we're going to remove margin left. And so now it looks good. And so now we can go to step 2, where we're going to build our functions to move an item into the array and calculate the layout. So to test if our layout function is going to work without actually using the gesture, there is one thing we can do. Here, instead of using order is in the bank, so -1, we're going to set the order to be index. And here, so would be different from, so equals -1 and default would be -1. But we'll change that later. It's just for testing. So let's see. Okay, perfect. So now what we want to do here is to calculate the layout. And actually I could do it here. So once everything has been measured, we want to calculate the layout. Just to test, we don't need it here, but just to test the function. So we pass offsets as parameter. And so we have our layout file and we can calculate layout. And the input are an array of offsets. And we need the width of the container here. So to know when we break lines. Okay. So container width. And this function is a worklet function. So the first thing we need to do is to filter the words which are not in the word bank. So we want only the words which are in the sentence, and we need to sort them by their order. So we're going to do offsets equals input. And we're going to do filter is in word bank. And we're going to sort by order. So this is the offsets we're going to need to calculate the layout. So is in word bank. Again, we need to not forget the worklet directive, so the function gets properly compiled and executed on the UI thread. So we have offset, and we return offset order.value is different from -1. And then by order, so we have A and B. Again, it's a worklet. So if A.order.value is greater than B.order.value, we return 1, if not -1. So here we have the offsets filtered and ordered as we want. So we can calculate the layout from there. So we need the current line, so the line number, and we need the line break. We also need the height of each word. Here, each word has the same height. So actually, if offset.length equals 0, we don't do anything. And then the height is offsets. So we know here we have at least one item dot height dot value. Okay. And now we can go over the offsets. So yeah, offsets for each. And we also have the index. So we need to calculate the X position. So we are gonna do a offset, a reduce. So we're gonna slice the offset from line break, because if we are at the second line, the line break goes back to is not 0, but it's whatever was the number of words on the first line. So we're going to do line break to index, and we're going to add the width of each element. So we can do total equals reduce okay, offset, we start at 0 and we add offset dot width dot value. Oops. Okay. So here we have the X position. If total plus offset dot width dot value is greater than container width, it means that we should break line because we don't have enough space to put the word. So we would do line number +1, and the line break will be index. Up. And since we are breaking line, offset dot x dot value is 0. If not, offset dot x dot value is total. And then we need to add y, which is height times number of lines, line number. Let's have a look. So this should display the words properly. Are we? So it looks like the function is not executed. And in fact, it's not is in word bank, is not in word bank. Is not in bank. I don't know. And so different from, we want the one where the order is different from -1. Yeah, so you see here, the layout was nicely calculated. And we need a second function, which is going to be to, we're going to drag the words, it's going to change the order, and we need to recalculate the layout depending on that. So we need a function to say, okay, we want to move one item from this position, here for instance, order 1 to, let's say, order 6, 5, and 4. And yeah, so we can build this function quickly. So we're going to call it reorder. And so we have the offsets as parameter. Actually, I'm going to just do this one here. And we have a from position and a to position. So to move an item from one position in the array to the other, there are many functions that do it. There are some also npm package which provide functions to do it. Here we cannot use an npm package to do it because the npm package wouldn't have the worklet directive, so the function couldn't be executed in the UI thread. So I shipped a function to do this where I copied the implementation from an npm package and I am shipping it part of Redash so that we can execute it in the UI thread. So here again, it's a worklet and we need to do essentially the same selection here where we want the words which are not in the bank, so which have an order, and we want to sort them by order so that the position on the array matches the order. Then we're going to do the array move, which is a function provided by Redash, and then apply the index to the order property so that it's in sync. And so I'm gonna do new offset is move from redash. Yes, we pass the offsets from two parameters and we get a copy of the array. And now we can map the array and have, so we have offset index and we copy to offset dot order dot value index. And so this is the function. So when we're going to drag an item, we're going to detect how is the item into this new position. We're going to reorder the offsets and then recalculate the layout. And that's step 3. We're going to wire these functions to the pan gesture handler. So let's create our pan gesture handler. And the first thing maybe I'm going to do here is put back this one to 0. And this was just for testing. So here it would be if different from -1 and order is going to be -1. So everything by default should be in the word bank. Perfect. And yeah, let's do it. Okay, so sortable word. And we're gonna wrap this into a pan gesture handler. And you'll notice, sometimes, so we have a pan gesture handler which drives some sort of translations. Sometimes we want the pan gesture handler to be outside the translation. So we don't want the position of the pan gesture handler to move depending on the translation. Sometimes you want the other way around, which is the case here. We want the translation to be outside. And we need the on gesture event. So we're going to create the on gesture event. And yeah, let's do it. So use animated gesture handler. And maybe, so what we want to do, we need to do many things here, but to start step by step, we're going to create a variable to detect if the gesture is active or not. If the gesture is active, we want the position translate X and translate Y to be the drag of the gesture. If not, we want basically to be this logic. So let me create a variable. Is gesture active? So use shared value and default value is false. And when the gesture is active, we're going to calculate some sort of drag position, so which we're going to store into a vector called translation. It's simply a short use vector. It's a simple shortcut from redash to create a X and Y value, shared value. So on start, the is gesture active dot value is true, and on end it's false, and on active translation dot x dot value. So here we get in the event translation X, translation Y. And we're gonna, when we start, of course, we need to remember the position before the gesture started. So we're gonna use, so there is a concept in the use animated gesture handler. So here it's gonna be pan, I think it's pan gesture handler. There is a concept of context, which is a state that we can maintain across gesture events. And it's all done on the UI thread. And we're going to remember the X and Y position. I think No, it's not. Pan gesture. I'm not getting here, unfortunately, the up-to-date version of the types. So maybe that's why I'm... Yes. Okay, so I'm using an old version of the TypeScript types. That's okay. But this was updated, I think, in Alpha 7, and we're using Alpha 6 with Expo. That's okay. So here, we're going to remember the position. So we're going to have context x equals should be, I would say, offset dot x dot value. I guess depending if the if we are in the bank, the offset is original x and original y. If not, it's indeed the position on the sentence, which is these two things here. And context, we get event and context. Perfect. And so here it knows about the types based on this generic. So here we do context.x plus translation x, and translation y.value is context.y plus translation y. Perfect. So context we get here. Now, if the gesture is active, we return translation.x.value. And same for y. Let's have a look. No. So the offset is not correct. There is something also we need to do. I mean, Z index, if the gesture is active, Z index is 100. We want the element to be above all elements, if not 0, but the starting offset is incorrect. Interesting. Should I'm wondering if it's because we set this one to true, so it returns translation x.value, but translation x.value hasn't been updated yet. So I'm wondering if this is the issue. So I think what I should do, it probably is the issue. So is to do translate. So context is translation x.value. Same for y. And these are the values we update. So that when this one is set to true, the values are immediately correct. Let's have a look. Yeah. Yes. No. There's still some... we still have the margin top and margin left. So essentially, what we have here, margin left and plus margin top. We could refactor. It's okay. So we could refactor these expressions all in this use derived value. But guess let's try. There would be original y here. Perfect. So now, and one thing we can do also immediately, you see how it doesn't transition back into the World Bank. So we can do return with Spring. It's in the bank. We transition to this position. If not, we transition back to the offset value. And same for Y. Looks funny. So plus margin top. Okay. And you see now it snaps nicely back to position. That's perfect. So we have here the basic gesture integration. If the word is in the bank, if the word is in bank and translation Y is below 100 pixels, so within the region of the sentence, we want to add the word to the sentence. So first, its order is going to be the last available order. So we're going to do offset dot order dot value to be, so we can call it last order. And then once there is more, we're going to calculate after what's the real order, but we need to add some order. And first here, we don't know based on the position. So we're just going to pick the last one and then fix it after. So we pass here offsets as parameter. So we need to create this function. So again, it needs to be a worklet. And so I think here we're simply going to return, so worklet, the length. So we sort the one which are not in the word bank. Actually, just this. And the length. So that would give us one order which is non-taken. And from there, we can calculate the layout. Offsets, container width. And when, so this will calculate the offset X. So when we end the gesture, we need to transition to the offset value. So our translation.x.value equals that with Spring to offset x.value and translation.y.value is with Spring of offset.y.value. So you see here, the word was placed. So here it will always be in the end, but we're going to add the logic now to if we go over one of these regions. And so maybe, but before we get into it, we can, so here we can go from the word bank to the sentence, you see nicely, up. But now we should be able also to go back to the word bank. So we can do else if is in, yeah, that's good. Is in bank dot value and translation dot y dot value is greater than 100. We set the order value to -1, and we need also to recalculate the layout. So let's have a look. So we go in and we go back. I can just put some words here and I can take it back here. Perfect. So now let's say, you see, I mean, here there is a, yeah, I know actually, okay, there is a bug. There is a bug. Let me first, where to start? There's many things we still need to do here. And I'm thinking that what we should do is calculate if we overlay the position of one of the word, we change position, recalculate the layout. And then there is obviously here, and you've seen it, there is a bug with last order, because here you see the order here is not correct because we remove one. When we remove it, when we remove this one, we need to recalculate the order. So we recalculate the layout, but the order of the word is wrong because we removed one word. So it's not enough to just put this one to -1. We need to move all the other ones. So actually, let me try to see if we can do should I do remove? So remove offsets and the position. Here we have. So here we do export const remove. We have the input index. And so we're going to do the same here. So we filter, we want the one which are in the sentence. We do want to sort by order. We want to remove. And here I can just, I guess, do splice of at index. And then we have the offsets. And now the position should match the index. And before we do this, we could do offsets index dot order dot value to be -1. Let's have a look. So we remove it here. Let me try. So we add some words. We broke something. So offset order equals -1 dot value. we do it here? No, because the index is not correct. Oh, okay. So maybe here we first need to filter with the index. So where E is different from index. And then we filter not in bank, sorter by order, and we should have the... So is it strange what I'm doing? So instead of working with functions to remove, reorder, which work with order directly, I map the order to an array, do the operation, and remap the indexes of the array to the order. That's what I do here. Is that... I think it's good, but let me know what you think. Maybe I'm not approaching this in the most efficient way, but that should fix the bug. And then finally we can look at the real piece, which is to the reordering. So let's say if I put this one back, and now this one should go last, which was not the case before. This is very cool. Yes, cool. Guys, it's a final stretch. Now, okay, we do all this fancy stuff. We're gonna look with the drag if we are over one of the tiles, and if we are, we switch the position, recalculate the layout. So for, and here I'm using, I never use the for loop. Here we need it because we want to break. So if we do a move, that's it. We don't need to go over all of the offsets. So that's why I'm using the for loop. I never use it, but here we really need the break capability. If, and continue also, because if I equals index, we skip because it's the same tile. And now if the, so we are translation.x.value. So we have the offset we're comparing to. So I guess I can call it O. So it's going to be offset I. If we are so over dot x, and also if it's in the bank. So O dot order dot value is different from -1, and it's over a tile. So we do the x and y axis. So O dot x dot value plus the width, so in between, right? So it's translation. And we do the same for the y-axis. So here would be height. So I'm still missing like this. Okay. If we are, so if this happens, we need to move. So offsets. So from index to the new position, which is I, and recalculate the layout. Offsets container width. And if this is done, we can break because that's it. We are done essentially. So we don't need to continue the loop. Let's have a look. So air east einen. So this is not working. This is not working at all. Einen Apfel. So here it's not the index, of course, because this is static. It's offset.order.value. And here would be offset o.order.value. Should be forbidden to promote such poor naming conventions on YouTube. I feel like I really need to work on this. This is really poor naming conventions. Couple of other names also which don't really make sense. Is in bank, I'm not sure. This should be really called offset? I'm not sure. Could be maybe more explicit. Original X, maybe should be more explicit. It's position X in the bank. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So if we skip, if it's the same index, that makes sense. We should also skip here if the order is, we can do it here. Maybe it's much easier. Let's have a look. What am I doing? It's not move, it's reorder. Move is from redash. So we cannot use this one directly. So now I hope this should work. Ist Apfel einen Apfel. Isn't that cool? Einen Apfel, weil hungrig ist. Kind of nice, isn't it? Guys, I hope you enjoyed this example. What a delightful user interaction. And this is really where Reanimated 2 shines, because we can execute these somewhat complex JavaScript functions on the UI thread and integrate them very easily with the pan gesture handler. As you've guessed already, all of our next videos are going to be based on Reanimated version 2. So I am looking forward to talk to you soon. And in the meantime, happy hacking.